Powered by Reb Media in partnership with TSN, it is season 6 of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. And it is presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. You've got an amazing invitation series, Ray, that now includes Canadian Club Classic, 18-year-old high proof. Hey, invite your senses to be elevated. Canadian whiskey experience like you've never had before with Canadian Club. How was golf, Ray?
Played 2 good rounds out of 6, 2 okay rounds, and 2 where I got the snot knocked out of me. It was really weird. Like the first day I was in Arizona, the first day was so cold and windy.
Really?
And yeah, I was not, clothing wise, was not prepared for that. So it was pretty chilly out there, but it's a beautiful place, and had a great couple of days there, and sitting out here in Washington, and got the Penguins and Capitals Friday. I don't know how many times Ovi and Crosby have played against each other, but
yeah, it's fun.
It's amazing, isn't it? After all these years, 20 years, and we're still talking about these guys, and they're doing what they're doing. They're both playing really well right now.
So we've got a good buddy of yours, Dean Evason, who's now, of course, the head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets, coming up in sport of the pod. And what a year for Dean and the Blue Jackets, and remarkable start, right? All things being considered here. Looks like he's having a good time. So we'll look forward to having a conversation with him, because he's one of the best.
He is. He's a super intense guy who, even when, like I've known him for 40 years now, and when I hear him talk, I can see how much he's changed and grown. Sure. And embraced a newer way of coaching a game that really, while it has changed, there's still some really fundamental things that are the same from 40 years ago that they are today. And it's pretty cool to watch him and continue his journey, this time in Columbus.
Yeah, Hall of Fame weekend as well coming up here, right? In Toronto, we've got the Hall of Fame game on TSN with Detroit and Toronto on Friday. So we'll get to, the inductees coming up, because I know that's a special weekend for you and Cammy and for so many people. Yeah. So, but a lot to get through. In headlines, brought to you by Tim Hortons. The Tim's NHL Hockey Challenge is back in the Tim Hortons app. Every game day, you pick players you think are going to score for your chance at daily and monthly prizes, including a 2025 Hyundai Tucson at season's end as part of the grand prize. So to do it, you download the Tim's app. It's free, it's easy to play, and it's a lot of fun along the way. All right. Man, it feels like we talk about the Nashville Predators show after show after show, and I'm starting to feel bad about it, because, you don't like to kick a team when they're down. Another loss last night, being Wednesday night. Alex Ovechkin with his 8th goal of the year, Ray, game-winning goal. So we'll get your thoughts on that game in just a minute. But first, speaking of Nashville, I want to listen to a comment that General Manager Barry Trotz made on Nashville radio this week.
We will be limited a little bit because of some of the contracts that we do have. If we don't get it going, then I'm going to start our rebuild plan a little bit. What we did in the summer was, as I say, fantasy hockey until we become a good team. If we do not become a good team, then we're going to see a lot more of our kids starting their process.
Yeah. So automatically, what leaps out of that comment is the word rebuild. We need to start the rebuild. So first of all, get your overall reaction to the comment that Barry made.
Surprised that he made it. Surprised that they're at 13 games, and they would be considering that this is a plan of immediacy, like that would happen now. But not as surprised, I'm sure, as Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault and Brady Shea are, when they hear, wait a minute, you mean like 4 months ago we were going to try to compete, and now after 13 games we're going to rebuild?
Yeah.
If you're going to rebuild, and Nashville has some really good young kids,
right?
If you're going to rebuild, you're going to wait for those kids to get their feet wet, And a lot of them, a lot of young players, they start well, they fade, they take another step, they fade, then they take another step. That might be 3 years.
Right.
Well, now you're in year 3 of 4 of Stamkos's contract. And then Barry says, we're limited by some of the contracts we signed. Last year, they tried to trade Saros and then signed him to an 8-year extension.
Mm-hmm.
Stamkos and Marchessault 4-year deals, right?
Yeah.
In the offseason. Shea a 7-year deal. Roman Josi, I think, has got 7 years left. So you have to think about what happens when you bring in those players. A player like Luke Evangelista, who had 16 goals last year, he's got nowhere to play.
Right.
So now he steps back. He was a healthy scratch last night. So it's a bit of a mess. This was my view. When they signed Marchessault and Stamkos, I didn't think they needed both.
Right.
If you want to go sign one of them, great. But you already have Philip Forsberg. Now you've got 2 top 6 right wingers. Mm-hmm. You don't have a number 1 center. Ryan O'Reilly's like a 2 center who had a great year last year. So you're short a centerman, but you spent all the money on the wings.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons that might happen too. Is like it's a relatively new ownership group. There could be pressure from the owners to the GM. That happens. Dregs, you know that better than me, but that happens all the time. There's pressure that comes down from the ownership suite, and you got to deal with that too. But I was quite surprised to hear these comments, actually.
So just to interject here right quickly, and we'll move on to a brighter story in the Winnipeg Jets, who are 12-1 currently. But I had a conversation with Barry prior to the game against the Washington Capitals, and he made it clear he feels like his comment is being misinterpreted because he used the R word, right? He used the rebuild word, and what he means by that is that I think they have 3 first-round draft picks. They've got a couple of second-round draft picks. I mean, you talked about the glut of young players that they have, the prospects that they have coming. So can he package some of that, if needed, to get a little bit more help in there, right, in the near future? So maybe less of a rebuild as we traditionally know it, and more about using some of those assets to help along what they already have. Because you're right, they can't turn their back on the experienced contracts that they brought in. They're all in it now. So probably a bad choice of word, according to Barry.
Yeah, the difficulty is, okay, so if you attach one of those first to a player, who is the player? Yeah. Right? Like which player is it going to be? And it's not going to be any of the 3 that or 5 that have no trade protection. So now you get into a different level of player. So you attach a draft pick to this player who probably doesn't make a lot of money. Yeah. And you don't have a lot of room to put a new player in. It's a really sticky spot they're in right now.
Well, all right.
And and if I could, because we're going to go to Winnipeg here.
Yeah.
If you look at the conference right now, just look at their division in the West. Yeah. Winnipeg, Minnesota, Dallas. I say Colorado. I think those 4 teams are going to make the playoffs. Yeah. Well, now what? Now you're fighting for a wild card. Oh, okay. So let's go to the Pacific. Vegas, Vancouver. You got to think Edmonton's going to get going. Sure. LA's off to a hell of a start. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. It's a frickin' log jam, and we're 15 games into the season. Yeah. Yeah. Like there's an old Yogi Berra line. It gets late early. And this is it, man.
Yeah. Look, again, mentioned Winnipeg 12-1, arguably the best story in hockey right now.
Unreal.
Just the way that they brought it all together. But regardless of how they finish the end of the regular season, do you kind of feel like they'll look back at this 6-game stretch, which includes tonight, Thursday night, against Colorado? Then they play Dallas. Then they play the Rangers. Then they play Tampa Bay. And then they play the Florida Panthers back-to-back after that. They got to look back at the 6 games ahead at some point and go, well, you know what? We split those 6 games. That was defining, or better than a 500 record in those 6. And it was a wonderful stretch for them. Like, how would you look at the 6 ahead?
Well, I think it'll be really instructive for Kevin Cheveldayoff about what kind of team they feel they have as they project forward into the playoffs. Like, this is an amazing start. But now you get into some heavyweights here, and you find out, oh, we're better in this spot than we thought, not as good in this spot as we thought. Like, it gives them a real live view of what their team is. Because this has been, when you look at them, they score, they defend, they're getting good goaltending. And it's really kind of funny when I look at the Jets that, unlike teams that have had, like we could say about teams that have had moderate to decent success in the playoffs and then lost. Like, does it really matter what the Rangers do in the regular season? No. It matters what they do in the playoffs. Winnipeg's had no success over the last couple of years, and some real hard disappointments. Yet it doesn't really matter what they do in the season. They got to get into the playoffs.
Agreed.
But doesn't it like, it's kind of an odd spot. Like, there's pressure on them to do well in the playoffs because they've face planted a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm looking at Connor's got 19 points already. He's got a point in all 12 games. Niederreiter's got 7 goals. Morrissey's got 16 points. Ehlers has got 8 goals. Like, man, they're a dangerous team, and they're brimming with confidence right now. Like, you watch them play, and they're a machine right now.
They are. As mentioned, as we zip along here in headlines, Hall of Fame weekend, always a special time of year in the hockey world, right? You always have to remind people, it is the Hockey Hall of Fame, not the National Hockey League Hall of Fame. So this year we have Colin Campbell and David Poile going in the builder category. Meanwhile, the player inductions, Ray, as you know, include Pavel Datsyuk, Jeremy Roenick, Shea Weber, Natalie Darwitz, and Chrissy Wendell-Pohl. Now, we don't have time in the podcast to outline the resume of each of the inductees. They're all great. They're all worthy. But Pavel Datsyuk, one of your all-time favorites, right?
So happy. He was going to get in anyway. I'm just so happy because the week prior to the induction, as we get into it, there's going to be all these highlight videos that show up and all this tributes done. He was such a brilliant, unassuming guy. But he was a brilliant guy because of the way he could see the game and play the game and play it. And he'd make this remarkable move and then he'd put his head down. Like, he was just so humble.
Yeah.
And I loved watching him. Like, some guy'd be skating up the ice and Datsyuk kind of like crawl up behind him and like, dink, lift his stick, turn around, and he's gone. And you'd be like, the guy felt, it's like the guy just realized he got his wallet pickpocketed. So good. Yeah. One of my favorites. JR was a force, right? At the end, he wasn't anywhere near what he was, but when he was in Philly and Chicago, an absolute force. And he played with fierceness and a flamboyance, and his numbers put him in the Hall. Yeah. Shea Weber was, like, he'd stand there and you could tell like how imposing he was.
Mountain of a man.
Oh man. And he was mean without being dirty, or if that's sort of a thing, like nobody really was you weren't too sure around him. Yeah. Like he a fabulous player, a rock player. I know the girls really well. Chrissy and Natalie, they played with Cammie on the Olympic team. Fantastic people, super skilled, like next level skill.
Yeah.
Natalie could really shoot the puck. Chrissy used to handle it like for sport and like dangle, like she had great, amazing hands. And
so correct me if I'm wrong. Did Chrissy not play in Little League World Series?
Yes, she did. Yeah. Yeah. Phenomenal athlete. And then she's married to Johnny Pohl, who played a bit with the Leafs. And she was at a point where she could have continued her career, and she wanted to go and start a family. And so they got the girls back home in Minnesota, and Minnesotans, they like to go home. And
yes, they do.
And so her and Natalie came onto the national team around the same time as Cammie was in the kind of the back half of her career. And Cammy just loves him, speaks so highly. And then you get to the builders, and you're a David who was, I don't know how many years was he a manager? Like
So
30
many.
plus, right?
Yeah.
And
one of the game's true gentlemen, though, right? Right. I mean, that's
yes.
what David Boyle is. Yeah.
Dregs, I walked past him in the, I guess it was 2016. They lost to Pittsburgh in the finals.
Yeah.
And I walked past him in the hallway, and the look on his face was like he was just gutted, for so long had tried to win. And you maybe don't acknowledge it at the time, but if you get there, it might be your best chance, which it was for them. And he just never got there. And Coley, he was my coach with New York and with the Rangers. And, he's a funny guy. Like he called me in after I got traded, and he's telling me, he's kind of like, he knew I didn't want to go. And he's like, we're short a centerman now. And I'm like, well, it's not my problem, Coley. You just traded me. But he was basically telling me this was not my trade. This was somebody else's trade. And then as for, decades been in player or in game ops in the NHL, and really, really funny, like really respected, but really funny. Yeah. And, has almost died in a farming accident. Yeah. God, it's got to be over a decade ago, Drakes?
Yeah, went into the lake. Yeah.
Yeah. And, this is an amazing honor for two guys that are, for the last bit, you're behind the scenes, like the game's out front, and you're just, it's a really great honor for them.
So if you're looking for amusement in reading at some point today, as we record here on Thursday, I just can't wait. So again, we do the Hall of Fame game, Detroit taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs Friday night. And traditionally, the quiz is part of the intermission, and the Hall of Famers participate in the quiz. And I think Jeff O'Neill is going to sit in on part of the quiz. But Jeremy Roenick's going to be on set. I didn't know that Roenick and O-Dog had some sort of history. So anyway, somebody at TSN brings it up the other day. You can Google this. It was Carolina playing, at the time, Phoenix. So the Arizona Coyotes, right? And I think the O-Dog knocks over Walt, Keith Tkachuk. Roenick comes in, and there's this and that. Well, after the game, O-Dog goes on this interview media tirade. It calls JR a goon. I have no respect for him. You got to Google it. It's outstanding. So we bring this up the other night. We're like, oh my God, we are playing that sound. But if we can find the sound, we're absolutely. Yeah. He's like, come on, like, why do you got to bring that up?
No, so, but what's one of the fun parts about stuff like that is, like, decades later, really, it's just funny. It's just, at the time, you're neck deep in emotion, and it's just funny. I mean, I would be stunned if they don't get a laugh out of that.
Well, both guys will find it funny now. You're right.
Yeah.
So big weekend ahead. It's always fun. Those are your headlines. Thank you to our good friends at Tim Hortons.
Time to make tonight's picks. Oh, he is definitely a winner. Good thing it's easy and free to play.
My streak is on the line here. Fingers crossed, because it all comes down to this. I just love getting the chance to win prizes every game day.
The Tim's NHL Hockey Challenge is back. Play on game day.
Our interviews on Ray and Dregs are brought to us by Canadian Club Classic 18-year-old High Proof. Invite your senses to an elevated Canadian whiskey experience with the always delicious Canadian Club. All right, joined by Columbus Blue Jackets head coach Dean Evason, who's, I wouldn't call him a regular yet, Ray. That's a little extreme to the Ray and Dregs podcast.
Close, though. Close.
It's second, maybe even third visit here to Ray and Dregs. So there you go. You're touring the Pacific, Dean. So let's get into the hockey side of things first. I mean, does a trip like this, still this early in the regular season, help a team come together?
I think so. Our group has their rookie dinner. They had it last night, rookie day. They don't stay out quite as long as we used to, Ray, I can tell you that. The bus rolled in a little bit early. But But yeah, no, I do think it can bring your team together, and obviously we get out here on the road together, and you're living together, and you're competing, and we've only played the one game, and it's early in the season here, so getting the guys together, I think, is a very positive thing.
Dean, you got hired, and shortly after getting hired, of course, there's the unspeakable tragedy of the Gaudreaus, the brothers, and you're trying to build a team, and now you got to deal with I don't even know what you call that, like just the terrible, all of it around that. How do you do that? What did you and Don Waddell strategize? What did you think about? What did you do out of your heart? Like what do you do?
Communicate, Ray. That was the biggest thing, is just to communicate with the players. They were starting to roll in. We talked to Boone Jenner specifically to get his thoughts, and did they still want to come in? At that time, they were just starting their captains' practices and what have you. And he said, "Yeah, 100%." I talked to all the guys. He wanted everybody to be together, going through the vigil and then the funeral. And yeah, it was tough. It's obviously, like you just said, it's a tragic, devastating event, for the family and for his wife and kids and the guys. It hit the guys. Like, I walked in the dressing room and I just meeting guys for the first time, and they just start crying. And we made it clear to every individual, every guy in the group, that whatever they need, we will try to provide them with that, and then just try to communicate as much as we possibly can to help everybody through it.
And along with that, your team is like incredibly young, like
Yeah.
crazy young. And so are you right away starting to teach, or are you trying to just separate a little bit of the emotion of what's going on from, okay, and then this is the hockey stuff over here, and you got young guys trying to figure their first steps in the league. There's a lot on, like, that was and is a lot on your plate.
Well, Ray, Don Waddell and his passion and his communication, and he's a fantastic person. So he's led us in all areas, and then the coaching staff that we have here is just absolutely amazing. And back to communication, they're very good at getting in there, and we've got a couple new guys, Scott Ford and Mike Havlin, who weren't here. Mike was in the organization, but we really used Stephen McCarthy and Jared Bowl have been here before, Nikki Backstrom, our goalie coach, and our two video guys. And just use them to communicate and talk to us about the different players. So to answer your question, no, we didn't change anything. We put our structure together, had our door open whenever the players wanted to talk. Tried to have one-on-one meetings with each and every one of them, just to kind of get to know them for sure, and then to communicate about the situation with Johnny and Matthew, and then we wanted as business as usual. We wanted to put the structure together for training camp and get after it, get their minds off it, get on the ice, get after what they love to do, and that's playing the game of hockey.
Dean, is there any player, or maybe players, perhaps one guy, I don't know, in particular, where now as head coach, you're watching this player play and you're like, well, on and off the ice, I didn't know that individual very well. And I certainly didn't know he was that good, maybe all around, or one specific thing.
You know what? I'll probably say a guy that's not even in our lineup right now is Kent Johnson. He started the season just absolutely fantastic. And I didn't know him. I would probably say Fantilli, but I did get to meet him at the World Championships in Prague. And I seen a bit of his game. He played a few exhibition games for us. But Kent Johnson was driving our offense. And off the ice, he's everybody talks about Johnny Gaudreau being a rink rat, that he wanted to be at the rink every day. Kent Johnson's the same way. He's still there every day. Him and Boone Jenner and Gabranson, three guys that we have hurt right now, they're in every meeting. They're in every day. They're in there. They're rehabbing and getting after it and trying to get their bodies back. But so I would probably say Dregs, that would be him. He was he was killing penalties for us, playing on the PP. He was doing everything. So sooner we can get all three of those guys back, but him in particular would be fantastic.
Now, you mentioned him driving the offense. You guys had a great first month. really, like really scored a lot of goals. Did you get nicked by the cannon at all? You get surprised when that thing goes off yet? Or are you used to it now?
Scares the hell out of me every time. I'm like, maybe I don't want to score that many goals, and I'm like, you better shut your mouth, right? I mean, I'd like that thing to go off six times every night, but 100% every time it goes off, I jump. So I surround myself with Bowl and Scott Ford, who are just mounting them in, so that I'm not too worried once it goes off. But yeah, it's great, and yeah, we've had a good start. Like and everybody talked about changing the culture in Columbus and all this. We didn't have to. We had to enhance the team aspect, and I think after the last 2-3 years, all the stuff that's gone in Columbus, it's easy to go individual. It's easy when you're not having success to go, I got to do this to help my career, all that kind of. So we've come in and we've just tried to put it into place, just that team first mentality, which our group is playing hard for each other. Yeah, we're young, but we've got some veteran guys that are leading in that dressing room and an extension of us as a management and coaching staff. So it's been a good start. We have to continue, obviously, to move forward.
You mentioned, of course, Donnie Waddell. I got to meet in Atlanta, and man, we had some bad teams there. And he had a budget about the size of his fist. I mean, he had no money to try and build a team. So on Halloween, I see him zipping through the office in his Captain America thing on a scooter. Do you bring one down for you, or like what is he doing there?
Ray, you might know my personality more than a lot of people. I would not do that. And when it was said to me, I texted him, I was like, what in the hell are you doing? And he said he does that all he does it all the time. But as you know, he has a fantastic personality. He's very quiet.
He does.
But he's very funny. He comes into the coach's room and sits and chats with us and communicates, and he's created, as much as we've wanted to create that team first atmosphere within our room with the players and our coaches room. He's done that with our entire organization up in the front office and then filtered down to us in the coaches room. He's absolutely been great.
Dean, you weren't away from coaching for that long. I mean, it wasn't an extended period, but you were away long enough, I'm sure, to recognize how much you missed it. So what was the first thing that you thought of? Maybe it was first preseason game, first NHL regular season game, back on a bench as a head coach, where you went, that's what I missed the most.
Drake, as soon as you get in there, it's like a drug. It's like, it's just, you're so intense, and it's the greatest place in the world to be. If you can't be a player, to stand behind that bench and to be on the ice with your skates on and to be skating around and communicating with the guys and trying to figure out how we can win some hockey games. There's not one specific thing. It's just it's all of it. It's getting in there and it's sitting with the coaches and we changed. In Columbus, we had the coaches all had their own offices, and I said, we're not using any more offices. We're sitting at this big table together, and we're throwing shots back and forth at each other, and that's what you miss when you're a player. You miss that chirps back and forth and sticking together and all that kind of stuff. Our coaching team has that too, so that's what I missed. Just all of it, but in particular, getting in there and getting it after it with a group of guys that are on the same page as you are.
So, what's the next little bit look like for you in Columbus? Like you're growing the team, you're learning the city. You liking it? You liking Columbus?
Ray, you know my golf game. I'm addicted to golf. There's pretty special place there. And Don Waddell and I are fortunate that our owner, Mr. McConnell, who owns the team, has a golf course called the Double Eagle, and we get a membership, him and I. And I think I have more rounds than anybody had all summer in a month. But it's the golf's fantastic. As you guys know, you've been to Columbus. It's a sneaky great city. The people are fantastic. The fan base is incredible. Don Waddell talked about it. Last year, he came to the last game. The last game of the season was sold out, standing ovation. They weren't obviously close to making the playoffs, and the fan base is still there. It's still like that. It's still strong. We do like PR stuff out in the community, and the people are just engaged. And it's I'm looking forward to continuing to learn the different areas and get involved in the community as much as I possibly can.
I didn't get a chance to talk to you. Did you watch the end of the World Series? Did you check into that, or I didn't see how that ended?
Well, I saw one game in particular, and that's it. But I was wondering.
Big Yankee fan for those that are listening.
But I was
fan.
wondering if the Red Sox were where they were at that point.
They're building. They're building. They're
building.
Retooling, rebuilding.
Again. All right.
Yeah, and if you want to look for their best players, they were playing for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe
Well, that was quite a team, and we were fortunate enough. The coaching staff, not all of us, but I think it's 5 of us, went down to a Yankee game in Cleveland. Prior to the World Series, so that was pretty special as well. And as you know, I get to New York at least once a year, and see a game there. So they had a good run. Obviously, fell a little short, but can't wait for next year.
Awesome! It's awesome to see you back behind the bench,
It is.
doing the thing you do. And have you got anybody you punch yet when you win?
Yeah.
Who's
Fordo.
the guy?
Fordo. I used to hit him back in the minors, but Mike Haviland's not the biggest guy in the world, so he's a little frail, he's older, and Steve McCarthy's on the other side of Fordo. So I've had a relationship with Fordo since I coached him as a player. So he can handle it. He's been punched by a lot bigger guys than me.
Excellent stuff. Well, look, Dean, we'll let you go. We're interrupting your day as you tour through the Pacific. So thanks for taking the time. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
Oh, boy.
And all the best the rest of the way.
It's all good. Thanks, boys. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to being a regular as many times as you guys want.
Awesome, Dino. Thanks. Hey, all the best.
All right, boys. Ciao.
We're not getting through Ask Ray and Dregs anything today because we're jammed up. We've got all sorts of things going on here, Ray.
Including our tech-savvy skills, which have put this on the rails from the moment we started.
Yeah. You can still send us your questions, and maybe they're tech-related, to our X account, Instagram, at Ray and Dregs, or on our website, rayanddregs.com. You're going to participate next week, but proud to have Acon as part of our sponsorship team now. So we had some fun with Jamie McLennan earlier this week and took a few between the eyes, not going to lie. So I look forward to your Ask Ray and Dregs experience coming up. What's the weekend for you? All right. Well, fittingly, we just joked about the fact that we've had some technical issues in this episode of Ray and Dregs, and Ray completely freezes up from his hotel room. So we'll let Ray go. Hopefully he has an enjoyable and tech-free weekend, but he'll be back early next week as we get ready for another episode of Ray and Dregs. So thank you to everybody for listening, for checking us out on our YouTube channel, and for generally just having some fun with us here on the Ray and Dregs podcast. And thank you to our sponsors who continue to support Ray and Dregs and make the pod possible. As always, our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, Tim Hortons, and welcome aboard, Acon. Until next time, stay safe, everybody.